Welcome to the Deconstructed Woman podcast, a podcast about breaking down barriers between women, exploring and sharing perspectives of each individual woman's experience, and discovering what we have in common and what makes us different. Hosted by Elisa Marie and Jojy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Deconstructed Woman podcast with Jojy and Elisa Marie. We're here today to talk about friendships, and the next couple episodes are going to be talking about friendships. And so this one is really focused on women, our friendships, and the sense of belonging that it creates for us. And so I think we all know that women are very good at making friends and keeping friends, and that the idea is that women have deeper friendships, though not to say that men can't have deep friendships, but I think historically women are the ones who are more considered to be willing to go to the meaty conversations and put themselves out there and things like that. And so when I think about friendships, that definitely is true for me. But I'm going to have Elisa come and talk to me a little bit about her friendships and if this seems the same way for her. So Elisa, what are your friendships like? And have you seen it change over your years, or have they basically stayed the same in terms of importance and number and things like that?
Yeah, I think one of the things as we were caring for this episode, I think you had, used the word tribe. And I think that that's something that very much resonates because I think that we're all, like you had said in the beginning, trying to find a place where we belong. And I think that that's different for everybody. But I think that friendships in general can be very complex. You can like somebody one day, hate the day, bounce back and kind of find common ground, and that they change and evolve over. So I think that there's kind of evolution of friendship that we've talked a lot about phases of life where we're at. And I think that this probably carries throughout your life. Some people establish early friendships in high school or college, and those get through, and sometimes, but you really see that complexity of friendships. Again, just you'll, do some of the most extreme things for your friends in their time of need and try to be there for them. But at this, the expectation is that that's reciprocated. And so I think that they are very complex, but I think that they're also just a source of so much empowerment in life. And so there's just a lot there kind of unpack. So I think that's like probably 7 different, but let's start with the idea of complexity of female relationships. I know that you had read a couple and we're kind of looking at that. And so what did you kind of find in what you were looking at and reading about?
Well, what I found was that women are more likely to befriend other people or other women than, say, men would. I mean, men are not, looking to meet individuals that they're going to become best buddies with. Whereas I definitely will say that I collect people in my life, and typically they are women, and they are women that I tend to, help mentor and get involved with them, and then have them for friends as life. A lot of women that I have interacted with that were like, say, in an internship role or such, or I picked them up, I known them throughout their whole lives and through their marriages, through children and things like that. And so that's just something that I tend to do. But in terms of deep friendships, I'm not somebody that has a ton of friends. Like I know a lot of people, but I don't consider them all like close friends of mine. I probably have, I would say at most 5 people that I would say really, really know me very well and really know, where I come from, who I am, who my husband is, maybe met my child, things like that. I mean, I don't have a huge circle of friends, and that's very intentional because I invest a lot of time in my friends. And so I'm not able to sustain deep relationships with many, many people at one time, just because it's not the nature. I'm all in, and I always am in like at 125%. So I have a close group of friends, but they're very small in number, and they actually don't know each other. And so I'm sort of the center of that, and my friends all know me, but they don't know each other, which is sort of interesting and somewhat odd, I think, now that I say that out loud. What are your friendships look like?
It's interesting because this takes me years. So I have, because now it's like, oh, I recently moved to the area, but I've been here about 8 years. So I think, I've kind of, let's just say, newer. I didn't grow up, have friendships from like elementary school on. So I think over the last, I've met people, and I was thinking about maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, I had gotten with women together to go to a salt room, and none of them knew each other. And kind of experimental in some ways, because I thought, let's just bring all of my friends that I hang individually all in one room. It happened, and it's pretty awesome that act in such like a like their only commonality, but they all found themselves in this room, which, if you don't like the salt room, is just like literally a room with Himalayan salt lamps, and the floor is salt, and you just go in and relax with calming music and almost dark. It's very, very relaxing. And so everybody just talking, and I was so smitten by the circumstances, because that could have gone very badly. It could have been really awkward, or people really maybe gotten into, I don't know, how that would have out. But I thought the worst, ended up being a lot of fun. Unfortunately, COVID hit shortly thereafter. We haven't done it again, but it just like kind of neat to see all of these women from different walks of life, from work, some from, just kind of through friends of a friend, come together. And so I think that that's that commonality, that you put a bunch of, the likelihood of them from common ground is pretty good, but it doesn't always or look like that. But that's what I think of, because I think that that's all of my friends I have are areas. So I think, similar to what you were saying, there's some friends that with some that I have just kind of met through different things, but that I would feel comfortable bringing them all together, though I'd really like to have that one-on-one conversation. I think when you bring people into the mix, just changes the dynamic. So I tend to have coffee with my friends, so that we have one-on-one time from life stuff, enjoying together. That's most favorite with my friends.
Yeah, I've had the same experience when I've brought together my friends, for either like fundraising or for, some kind of an event. If we're doing, I don't know, like a makeup party, or I don't know, something, clothing shopping or something, I find that my friends, and probably yours too, Alyssa, I mean, they're very respectful of my other friends. They're almost curious about the other friends. They're interested to see like all the different people that make up like who I know. And I think just generally women tend to be a lot more polite and well mannered. And so they get along very well. And I think they're trying to find out, why is, so and so friends with Jojy, because she looks very different, or she's from a different walk of life, or she's not in the same work area, or where did she meet her and how do they know each other. And so I think women are very interested to find out about other women. And so I think that goes really well. Now, I guess one of the obvious things is, do you feel that men's relationships are different than women's relationships, in terms of, I think the stereotype is, a bunch of guys hanging out at a bar, drinking beer and watching sports. I mean, I know that that's not the only thing that men do together, but what do you think of men's relationships, and how have you seen, your father or your husband or your cousins or whomever in your life have fit that stereotype or not fit that stereotype?
I would say that it depends on their personality, because like it just, the men in my life, in my immediate like circle, is obviously, like you mentioned, my father, my husband. I have a couple close friends who are men. And amongst them, they're all really but I don't know. So part of that is, don't ask like, what are your friendships like? That might be a good question to have one of these days, like in a friendship. I should have done that before this episode and gotten some. So maybe I'll have to do that before the next episode, and kind of report back what they say. But I do that they have friendships, but it doesn't level. I mean, I know that my husband has long conversations with his friends, but I'm not sure what they talk about. I mean, I've like had a couple like where he's cooking and he's talking to his friend, and they're just talking about what seems to me random thoughts, a collective phrasing. Like they're this person, I ran into this person yesterday and they're just kind of jumping all over the place, but it doesn't seem to have like one direct line of thought. And again, that might be just like their personalities, but there's just like a lot of conversation where like, where are we going with this? Like I'm baffled by them, but that's them spending time together and that's nourish their friendship. So maybe that is a little bit different than, like I said, for me, where I want to have that one-on-one, we're having those deeper conversations. Let's talk about what we're going through. Let's talk about our deeper feelings and how this phase of life. And I love other perspective on, how they maneuver through it. So I think all of those things is how I view friendships. But I bet my husband, example, he would say, no, the focus isn't about having conversations. It's just about talking and staying in touch and kind of between us. I think that's what at least him.
Yeah, when you were talking about, you raised a good point about, if you're in the same location that you grew up in or had your childhood. I'm like you. I relocated to Illinois in my mid 20s. And so none of my childhood friends are here. And when I think about, I've got two brothers and both of them still live in Michigan. And they are very close to their friends. My younger brother has had a friend, I want to say, since they were in elementary school. My older brother, his group of friends, they've known each other probably some since high school and some since college. And they're both of my brothers have tight relationships. And I think that, so it is sort of making me stop and think. I think that the way, like my brothers would not hang out with their friends and just drink coffee and socialize like I would with my friends. Like I can sit and talk to my friends like you sounds like you can for hours. And with one friend I can go through the last year and a couple of hours, couple cups of coffee, and we're good. And we just pick up where we left off, a year before. Whereas I think my brothers, they have, I don't know how deep they go, but when they need to go deep, they do go deep. But I think they're very intentional about that. I'm just thinking about my older brother and some of the counsel he's given some of his friends. I don't think he likes to go there, but if he has to, I think he will. But generally, they get together and they're having a good time, whether it's about sports or whether it's about, playing pool or whether it's just hanging out together. They're not necessarily, and they're joking around and, goofing around. But I've also known that my brother has had some very serious relationships. And it also happens in a group. And I don't know if that would necessarily happen with women. I can't ever think of a time where I had, with a group of my friends, maybe had a very strong conversation or an important conversation with one person within that group. That seems a lot like an us against them kind of a thing. That's never happened to me that I can think of off the top of my head. I might do it one on one. I know I've done it one on one, but I've never done it in a group setting. Whereas I think for my brother, if I'm understanding things correctly, things like that do happen in a smaller group. Do you think that that's a difference? Is that something your husband might do, or is that just a one off in my family?
You mean the groups versus one-on-one?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I see kind of both. So I don't again specifically, but something that I did think of as you were talking, I was thinking about, I had read an article or maybe a book somewhere about how I think it had to be something like how to talk with your spouse, something of that nature. And it was talking about like, sometimes it's better to do something versus try to sit down and, have a conversation. So like going for a walk with your spouse, like you're moving, and sometimes that because you're not like sitting and staring at each other like we were saying, like the coffee dates. And that's what it made me think of, is like maybe there's something you were talking about, like going out or even engaging in sports or something where like about men and women, where men who maybe move or need to kind of be doing something, like if they're working on something, a project together, like talk more women sitting across from each other. Like that just popped into my head because that some of the time, like some of the deeper conversations I've had with my husband when we're on walks doing a project together or we're doing something, and when we go out for dinner it's more awkward because he's like, okay, now like think about what I want to say to you but also just stare at you. But that came as I was thinking about like and the difference.
Well, I mean, I think that, in my situation, because my husband and I are alone all day long, I mean, our child has left the house, right? So, I mean, in our sense, it's just the two of us. I think that we have gotten much more comfortable with having to talk to each other because, all that white noise is gone. But I do think that I think I can relate to that when you were saying that there was probably a time where you're sort of like, okay, now we've got to talk about something before the food arrives or something. But I don't know. That I think might come with time when you've got less distractions and you spend more time one on one. The other thing I wanted to talk about was an article that I shared, and I ran this by one of my friends. You and I both talked about how our friends are older than us. So one of my friends is 76 years old. And so one of the articles I read was an article by Chris Melore. And she wrote an article about BFFs for the brain. And it talked about older women and this correlation that a researcher did at Marquette University, where they talked about like how older women find to have less stress. They react differently as with stress because they have so many friendships, and there's a correlation between older women friendships and stress. And I thought that was interesting, and so I sent it over to my girlfriend to read, and she sent me this emoji that was like 100% thumbs up, because she agreed with that. She did agree that, as one of the things that we rely on, I think, as we get older, is that to talk to people about things that are stressful, and helping us talk that out with a friend does relieve stress. And everything I've read about, longevity in life, the blue zone kinds of ideas all talk about the importance of social relationships and longevity. And so I think there's definitely something to that connection, just because I think feeling connected to someone does help you not feel so alone. And that's the part that I resonated with when we were talking earlier about friendships and being kids and things like that, is that I've never really thought about having a lot of friends to make me feel like I belonged. I always thought to myself, boy, if I just had one really good friend in high school, it made that experience so much better. And in high school, I had a best friend. We did have a couple other friends that was part of our group, but my friend and I were very close, and we talked every day and we spent every day together, went to the same high school. And she was my lifeline in high school. If I didn't have her in high school, I think high school would have been a very, very different experience for me. And that's one of the things that I told my daughter as well when she was getting into, high school, because it's going to be a rough time for everybody and anybody, is that you just really need one really good friend, and that person will see you through. And that was because that was true for me. I didn't want a whole bunch of people in my life. I think that one person was what I needed, and it worked out really well for me. And so I think about that, about the fact that, some of those deep friendships I had when I was younger, they meant so much to me back then. And now, because of relocation and things, I really haven't reached out to them. And so it makes me wonder how all those individuals are doing now. I mean, it does make me stop and think about, how many kids do they have now? I mean, I do know that my girlfriend from high school has two kids, a boy and a girl, and things like that. We've stayed somewhat in touch, but I've lost touch with her in the last 10, 15 years, honestly. But so the nature of friendships do change, of course, as we know. But did you need a lot of friends in high school to feel connected to your group, or were you more like me and just had like one or two main friends?
Yeah, I was more of the friend. I didn't have, well, I have a boy, but a lot of guy friends because, interestingly enough, to have deep conversations back then. So that's an evolution. I didn't want to have. It seemed like the girls, and that's what you're saying. Like, I have older friends, and so I was kind of like, I didn't want to have the conversations in high school about boys and that. Like, I passed that. I'm thinking about my career and what I want to do with my life, and so to avoid having the conversation, I hang out with the boys. And not to say that all my, but that was like, I in college, I remember high school, but I hung out with a group of guys who on the weekend ball, and it was perfect because I would be sitting in like the loft doing my homework, my college classes, and and it was just perfect. I didn't have to have deep conversations. I didn't have to really focus on, and so maybe some of that was avoidance, but um, as I've gotten older, again, a lot of my are, and I know this is going to be one of our next episodes, you really do prune or kind of choose and pick who you want to continue to have in your life. And so I think that is pretty much what I was doing kind of all throughout the time, was choosing and picking who I wanted to stay around. To that, we touch on that in just a little bit. So discussion, but I have smaller amounts of friendships that, like you said, is on purpose.
Yeah, you raised another question, probably could be a full episode in itself, but the question of, can men and women be friends and not ever move into romantic territory? It sounds like you were able to do that without any problem, have a group of male friends and navigate those waters pretty easily.
Yeah, yes, and definitely a couple of the guys. Well, I would say one of the guys. I think there was definitely feelings towards me. Reciprocate that with everybody, but one person in particular, kind of a more of a long relationship later on in college. So I think that yes, you can be within a group, but I think that those feelings do kind of, especially when you're only female. I think that it could cause problems, though it did for us. I just dated the one gentleman, and him and I were together for, it was only like 1 year, him, I guess, but of I still am very close with, and he lives nearby. We just pick up where we left off, and that there's no within that friendship, that's always been like a brother sister. And so I think that if you have that friendship where you're always there for each other, but you go your separate paths and converge at certain times, I think that that's probably different. Like you said, that's probably another episode.
Yes, I know. Well, who knew friendships could lead to so many different angles within it? So gives us lots more topics to think about for future episodes. But let's wrap this one up, because I know that we're interested in the next topic as well. So signing off for this week, and I would appreciate everybody out there listening. Keep your eye out for our Facebook group chat, because I'm sure that we're going to have a question posed about friendships coming from this. So you can always visit us at the Facebook group. And if you're a listener and want to participate, please request an invitation, and we'd love to have you on our group and chatting with us. I also wanted to take a quick moment to introduce a TikTok channel that we've started, and you can follow us. I'm the main video person right now, but I'm sure Alyssa might get involved at some point. And you can follow us at the DE Woman. And that will, I usually do a very short video after the podcast is published to sort of talk about, okay, where do we go from here in terms of how do we take this information we've discussed and bring it back into our everyday lives. It's been an interesting experiment, and I'm having a little bit of fun with it. So lots of different ways for you listeners to keep up with us and be in touch with us. And of course, we love your emails as well. So just reach out in the way that you make contact most often. So signing off for now. Thank you for being a part of our listenership, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to our podcast, The Deconstructed Woman. If you liked this podcast, please share it with your friends, rate this episode, or subscribe to be notified of all new content. We want to hear from you, our listener. Do you have thoughts on the discussions we're having? Want to share topic suggestions, or want to join us for a topic that you're passionate about? Contact us at our email address, thedeconstructedwoman@gmail.com.